Iran and China work together to safeguard territorial integrity, sovereignty and autonomy. Editor's note: February 11 marks Iran's National Day and the 43rd anniversary of the Islamic Revolution of 1979. In an exclusive interview with the Global Times, Iranian ambassador to China Mohammad Keshavarzzadeh spoke with reporters Hu Yuwei and Bai Yuni, highly recognizing the hard-won victories of both Iranians and Chinese people in preserving territorial integrity and political sovereignty. The envoy applauded the historically glorious and memorable Beijing Winter Olympics. He also underlined joint Iran-China efforts aimed toward regional and global peace and stability, while sounding a warning that the U.S.-owned policies will topple U.S. hegemony. Iran will ensure a steady supply of oil to China, and has the prospect of enhanced military cooperation with China, he noted. Part 1: Common Routes and Firm Support. GT, February 11 is Iran's National Day. Will there be any celebrations in Beijing? What messages do you wish to convey to the Chinese people on this day? Keshavarzzadeh: in light of pandemic prevention measures, we will have no such gathering in Beijing to commemorate our National Day. But we have considered various online alternatives, including webinars, messages, articles, interviews, and social media posts. The 22nd of Bahman is a reminder of pride and honor to the Iranian nation as a result of the fundamental change that took place with the historical unity of the people who, together and under the leadership of Imam Khomeini, chose the path of struggle for a better tomorrow. Iran and China had splendid civilizations in ancient times. The 1979 Iranian Revolution was a victory for the Iranian people against outside invasion. In contemporary times, both Iran and China have made much effort to preserve their territorial integrity and sovereignty and their citizens' right to self-governance. China and Iran have always been at the forefront against U.S. hegemony and share similar views and attitudes on many international and regional issues. China opposes unfairly imposed U.S. sanctions on Iran, and Iran firmly supports China's territorial integrity and its position on Hong Kong and Taiwan-related affairs, which the U.S. has ceaselessly sought to influence. GT, if China and the U.S. go to war over the Taiwan question, what position would Iran take? And if the U.S. blocks China's oil transportation routes, will Iran continue to supply oil to China? Keshavarzzadeh: the One China principle is an important baseline for us. On the Taiwan question, Iran fully supports China, and we also hope that the U.S. won't misguidedly ignite a military conflict with China rather than negotiate. In case of a conflict, Iran will assuredly support China and ensure the security of energy delivery. The China-Iran relationship is far-reaching, and Iran will not change its policy toward China because of changes in U.S. attitudes, as some countries have done. GT, in January, China and Iran jointly implemented a 25-year comprehensive cooperation plan signed in 2021. Media reported that one of the agreed-upon terms of the deal is a long-term supply of Iranian oil to China. Can you provide more information on this and on the current cooperation between China and Iran in oil and other energy fields? Will Iran consider gradually de-dollarizing its oil exports to China in the future? Keshavarzzadeh: presently, Iran is under no international sanctions aside from U.S.-imposed unilateral ones. China, as an important player in the international community, has repeatedly opposed and disavowed such sanctions. China engages in bilateral and international trade relations based on international norms, rules, and regulations, disregarding unilateral U.S. sanctions. Oil supply is only a small part of a comprehensive agreement, and energy cooperation will continue in the future. In energy-related international trade agreements, de-dollarization has become a trend. Many other countries including Russia, Brazil, and India are engaging in bilateral trade based on their local currencies, aimed at confronting this unilateral system and U.S.-led bullying that weaponizes the dollar and leverages against other nations. Additionally, it enhances China's role in international trade to overtake the U.S. Naturally, other countries will be inspired to engage in yuan-based trade. GT, under the agreement, Iran and China may also enhance military cooperation. Mahmoud Abbassadeh-Meshkini, spokesman of the Iranian Parliament's National Security and Foreign Policy Committee, said in a statement to Iranian media. Could you brief us on the prospects of relevant military cooperation between the two countries? Keshavarzzadeh: the UN arms embargo on Iran expired on October 18, 2020, as agreed upon in Iran's 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Thus, Iran will be able to engage in military cooperation with other countries. Both Iran and China attach great importance to the marine safety. The trilateral marine security belt naval exercises jointly executed by China, Iran, and Russia were done in the southern sea of Iran and the Indian Ocean to boost regional and international peace and stability. To ensure the safety of navigation routes, Iran intends to purchase military equipment from China and Russia. Iran is also working to become a full member at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. The common threats the SCO members face are terrorism, separatism, and extremism, and it is also the common goal of China and Iran to combat these forces, which needs military support. Military cooperation outside the SCO framework is also likely. Iranian and Chinese military forces have also gotten closer during the COVID-19 pandemic due to mutual support in medical supplies and vaccines. Part 2, Alliance for Regional Peace Against Hegemony. GT. There are predictions that the increasingly close relations among China, Russia, and Iran in the past 2 years will end Washington's hegemony in the world. What is your assessment of such claims? Keshabarzadeh, before an alliance could end U.S. hegemony, Washington's misguided policies, including 2 attacks on the Middle East, interference in Afghanistan, misguided economic policies which led to the 2008 financial crisis, and a raft of other U.S. orchestrated policies will undermine U.S. hegemony. The U.S. is a superpower, but unfortunately and ironically, most of the regions and projects in which it has intervened have ended up in chaos with serious consequences. For example, its entry into West Asia was followed by 2 wars, which brought great disaster to the stability of the regional order and local people. The Iran-China-Russia alliance is aimed at ensuring regional and international peace and stability, which the U.S. is effectively undermining. GT. Under what conditions would Iran recognize Afghanistan's Taliban government? Will Iran discuss its stance on Afghanistan with Beijing and Moscow? Keshabarzadeh, Iran as a neighbor shares cultural links and long borders with Afghanistan and supports an inclusive Afghan government that will lead to national reconciliation, peace, and integrity with all the ethno-political groups and parties fully participatory. Though we do not support all Taliban-led governmental practice in Afghanistan, we respect Afghanistan's political structure and developmental paths as determined by Afghan people's sovereign decision-making as long as it is an inclusive government. There are now more than 4 million Afghan refugees in Iran. Given cultural similarities, we want to help, not interfere. By honoring a non-interference policy and emphasizing Afghanistan's territorial integrity and sovereignty, both Iran and China reaffirm the right of Afghan people to determine their future political and economic path. Both sides also share similar views on weeding out terrorism in Afghanistan and its manifestations in neighboring countries. We are in active communication with China and Russia on this issue. Iran sees China's role in Afghanistan as a building one. GT. The parties involved in the comprehensive agreement on the Iranian nuclear issue were scheduled to resume negotiations in Vienna on August 8. Iran has repeatedly demanded U.S. goodwill and action in the upcoming negotiations. Do you think the U.S. has shown enough goodwill in current negotiations? Keshabarzadeh, the world witnessed the U.S. illegal withdrawal from COPA, an agreement that resulted from decade-long continuous negotiations. In addition to the goodwill issue, we are now faced with the problem of not crediting the signature of different governments in that country. Meanwhile, as a huge step toward proliferation, the U.S. founded AUKUS. No one can question Iran's seriousness and goodwill in fulfilling its obligations in their entirety. After the U.S. unlawful withdrawal and the imposition of sanctions, Iran refrained from remedial measures in good faith, and, granting the request of the remaining JCPOA participants and the European Union as the coordinator of the nuclear deal, avoided resorting to the cessation of its commitments under the JCPOA so as to provide the opportunity for other JCPOA participants to compensate for the negative impacts of U.S. withdrawal. GT. The 20th National Congress of the Communist Party of China will be held in Beijing in the second half of 2022, drawing global attention. What are your expectations for the Congress? Will Iran consider translating some of the resultant documents from the 20th CPC National Congress into Persian for governance reference? Keshabarzadeh, over the years, as an ambassador to China, I have witnessed CPC national congresses, the outcomes of which have played a very constructive role in promoting China's development. As the 19th CPC National Congress was very successful, the 20th National Congress is bound for success. The good performance of successful world leaders, including China, will be studied by our country's authorities. We will also share the advanced experience of the 20th National Congress of the CPC with Iran for further study.